live at Radio Row with ESPN superstar Stephen A. Smith. Welcome, Stephen A.
What's going on, Mike? How you doing, man? Long time no see. How you been?
I'm good.
All right.
Let's talk about the big game. When you look at the Eagles and the Chiefs, What are the keys to victory for both sides?
Well, I think if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, your defense has to show up. You're going to have to neutralize Saquon Barkley. You can't let him go berserk. That's number one. Number two, when you're pressuring Jalen Hurts, he is not as formidable against the blitz as he is against a clean pocket, obviously. But when you're pressuring him, you're going to have to contain him within the pocket because he can scramble with the football. You certainly don't want to relent to that as well. And so when you're looking at it from that standpoint, for Kansas City's defense, you're going to have to answer the call in that regard. Offensively, whether it's Juju Smith-Schuster, whether it's Worthy, whether it's Hollywood Brown or whatever, somebody's going to have to give Travis Kelce some help. Travis Kelce hovered around last year around 900 yards and change. And then the playoffs came. He had like 32 receptions for about nearly 350 yards. This year, hovered around 800-plus yards, right? And then the postseason comes and he reminds you who the hell he is.
Right.
And so you got to make sure, if you're the Philadelphia Eagles, that you remember who that brother is, what he brings to the table, how he's a reliable target for Patrick Mahomes, and you got to force somebody else to beat you. It can't be typical Travis Kelce where you're looking at him and somehow, some way, no matter how slow he appears or how he may have looked like he lost a step or whatever, he's always open when it counts. That can't be the case in this game. The Eagles got the number one defense. They're top three defense in the red zone, third down conversions, etc. This team, this defense, Vic Fangio's defense has to show up. He's 0-8 against Patrick Mahomes, but 6 of those losses was with him as the defensive coordinator in Denver. Those are the Denver Broncos. They weren't even what they are now.
Right.
So we understand that. And Patrick Mahomes has dominated the AFC West. But the other 2 games was when he was going from Denver. It just can't be one of those situations right now. You got the number one defense. They got to show up and act like the Philadelphia Eagles. And Saquon's got to get loose.
Yeah. Speaking of Saquon, he's been Superman. Could this be one of those Super Bowls where a superstar just takes over the game?
It could be. And if that happens, I think that would be the best, most surefire way for the Philadelphia Eagles to win the Super Bowl championship. Saquon Barkley gets loose. He's electrifying. I think that he's the closest thing we've seen to Barry Sanders.
Yeah. That's
my personal estimation. Short, stocky, bionic legs, can get through a hole with cat quickness, can juke you, very evasive. He's electrifying. And what he's brought to the Eagles speaks for itself. And so you're going to have to do it. You've been doing it throughout the playoffs. You did it throughout the regular season. You're going to need to do it in this Super Bowl to elevate Philadelphia's chances of knocking off the 2-time reigning defending Super Bowl champions.
The Chiefs have been historically great, and they're going for a three-peat. But when you talk to fans and folks in the business, do you get the sense that fans are getting a little tired of the Chiefs or think that they get preferential treatment?
Fans always get tired of winners, and fans are always looking for an excuse to complain about winners. That's the way that it goes. Could there be legitimacy to their arguments in terms of the Chiefs getting favorable calls? Listening to my guy, Mad Dog Russo, sure, you might say that. My personal opinion is when you look at Patrick Mahomes and, some of the advantages that he has gained, he's ranking like 8th in terms of quarterbacks. Tua Tagovailoa gets more calls than him, along with various others. I think he's tied with like Jared Goff and Baker Mayfield in that regard. So I look at it from that standpoint, and I say it's a bit overblown. But I've never seen any sport where you have a superstar caliber team where some calls didn't appear to be favorable to them. That's how it goes. And there have been plenty of games, as a matter of fact, every single Sunday, where we've watched games that didn't involve the Kansas City Chiefs at all, where we've seen people receive favorable calls. So you got to understand that's what comes along with it. And to be the man, you've got to beat the man. Don't bitch, whine, and moan about what calls you ain't getting. Anticipate that those kind of things may happen from time to time in this game and do what you have to do to ensure that you're going to be able to overcome it. It's very simple.
Good point. I know you're a boxing fan.
Yeah.
You can't leave it up to the judges.
No, you cannot leave it up.
4th and 1, you got to get 5 yards.
That's right.
You can't get 1.
Exactly. You can't do what Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills did.
Right.
You couldn't get an inch. That's unacceptable. You got to find a way to get that yard to make sure you get that first down. If they had gotten that first down, they might have won the game.
Yeah.
because they would have scored and Kansas City would not have had but so much time to march down the field. You just never know. You got to look at it from that standpoint. And unfortunately, it didn't work out for them because I hated seeing Josh Allen go down like that because he's a terrific quarterback and he played a terrific game. And it's just a damn shame that one person seems to repeatedly stand in his way.
Yeah. Let's talk about Stephen A. Smith, the brand. You've got your own production company. You're going into documentaries. You've got a YouTube show, which has now crossed 1 million subscribers. Congratulations, by the way. And that's like, what, in a year and change?
Yeah, 22 months.
Yeah. Talk about the Stephen A. Smith brand expanding into these different areas, even acting.
Well, I never wanted to be one-dimensional. I always knew that there was more to me than writing for a newspaper. I always knew there was more to me than just doing a sports talk radio show. And being in television, I know there's more to me than that. Under no circumstances, at any time, have I ever been bored with sports. Have I never not wanted to do it? I've always been somebody that's been passionate about sports. And that will never, ever fade. That's my livelihood. The flip side to that, however, is I've never, ever wanted to be one-dimensional. I've never been that guy. And so when you first start off your career, they're saying you're a basketball guy. You're a basketball guy. Well, let me show you that I can discuss football. Let me show you that I can talk baseball. Like, I know these sports. The difference is that I didn't get to watch them as much because I was on the road 200-plus days out of the year covering basketball. Then when I started being able to cover football, okay, so I know it. But I'm going up against pro players, guys that are Super Bowl champions and stuff like that. Well, no matter what I know that I don't know what they know.
Right.
So from a reporter's perspective, from a pundit's perspective, I know that I know what I'm supposed to know, but I never pretend I know more than the actual participants because that's the quickest way to insult them, and I never do that. But as time has gone on and I've seen the world evolve, I think that I'm a product of the hip-hop generation. Man, I remember the movie Crush Groove. Run DMC were actors in that movie. Curtis Blow was an actor in that movie. You watch Get Rich or Die Trying, 50 Cent was an actor in that movie. 8 Mile, Eminem was an actor in that movie. And I'm like, wait a minute. And I'm watching all of these people do different things. I saw Prince in Purple Rain, okay? And I'm not trying to say they're Denzel or they're Will Smith or they're Morgan Freeman or somebody or Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, who are two of my favorites. I'm simply saying you see a world that allows you to expand and go beyond the borders of what your supposed talents are supposed to be. And so for me, I looked at all of those things and I said, what do I want to do? I know that I know television and I know content. Yeah. People talk about docuseries. Well, I can't announce anything, but I've gotten a pilot approved for a drama series. Okay. I'm not playing when I say I want to produce content. I admire Jerry Bruckheimer. I admire Dick Wolf. I admire people like this. I look at their work and the product they put. I'm a Law and Order fanatic. FBI that's out now. I love that show, but I like sitcoms like Martin and Sanford and Son and Archie Bunker and the Jeffersons. And I'm a product of the television generation. And I love my movies as well. And so when I think about things like that, I think about Antoine Fuqua and the great work that he's done with Denzel over the years. One of the things on my bucket list is to work with him. He is a friend of mine. He is brilliant. He's a genius. Just to learn from him. Because I want to do these kind of things. And I see that, and I had to look at ESPN and say, I'm not playing. I'm really trying to do this. So when I started my production company, Mr. SAS, I now changed it to the title of my best-selling book, Straight Shooter. That's the name of my company now, Straight Shooter Media, Straight Shooter Productions. I want to produce scripted and unscripted content. My podcast / YouTube show is falling under my production company. A channel that I hope to build in the years to come is going to be under my production company. While I'm still doing sports, while I'm still acting on General Hospital, while I'm still doing a potpourri of things that I plan on doing. And when I talked to ESPN and I sat down and from Bob Iger to Jimmy Pitaro, to Burke Magnus, to Dave Roberts, and everybody else, Dana Walden, I looked them in the face like, I'm really not playing. This is not something that I'm trying to do just because, well, you know what, it'd be exciting. No, I really, really, really want to do it, and I want to show that I can do it. And so, they've been supportive in that regard, and I'm appreciative of that. And all they've asked in return is that I continue to love sports as much as I do, and I continue to do for them what I'm doing. So hopefully that'll work itself out and we can move forward. And those are all my aspirations.
Speaking of Jimmy Pitaro and Burke Magnus, are there any updates on your contract situation?
We haven't reached a deal yet, but we're getting close. We've been negotiating since June. But listen, I love where I work, and I have a very, very close relationship with Jimmy Pitaro, who's been incredible to me, and Bob Iger as well, of course. And knowing when you have those kind of relationships, you don't buy those, and to have the kind of relationship that I have with them, everything that I want to do, you got to make sure all of that is there and it's in the language, the devil's in the details, because from a numbers perspective, we've agreed months ago. We like literally months ago. It's not about the money at this point because the money was agreed to back in October. The issue is all the things that I just finished talking to you about and what I want to do, working out that language because lawyers get involved and all of that other stuff. But I work at a great place. We're the worldwide leader. We're number one. And I've got great bosses. I've got great colleagues and friends. I love working there. And I'm anticipating that, hopefully we'll reach a deal very, very soon. And I'll march forward with ESPN for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. I love that Pitaro has the Stephen A. rules, which allow you to speak about politics. You go on Sean Hannity. You go on Newsmax. You go on The View. You're giving your political views. In fact, we did a story today that went viral about you getting 2% in a presidential poll for 2028. What was your reaction to that?
I laughed. It was funny because I can't imagine myself ever running. First of all, I'm not knowledgeable enough. But some would argue that our present president isn't that knowledgeable, but I'm not going to disrespect him like that. The American people voted for him. They made it very, very clear who they wanted the president of the United States to be, who the 47th president was going to be. And I'm definitely going to respect that. But for me personally, I'm not a politician, man. I mean, when I think about politics, I think about shaking hands and kissing babies and trying to curry favor. That's my life. I'm not that dude. I'm the kind of guy that wants to go in there and I want to do what I believe is in the best interest of the American people. And for me, the number one thing that will always dissuade me from political office is having to campaign for political office. Now, if I could just get interviewed and get into office, that'd be different. But that campaign stuff would kill me because, you see, I am a straight shooter. And I am going to go up in there, and I am going to call it like I see it. I don't give a damn if it's at a rally, if it's at a convention, if it's I don't care where it's at. You ask me a question, I'm going to give you an answer, and I'm not going to shy away from it. And sometimes that's not politically expedient. But I will tell you that I've always wanted to give political commentary. I've been that way all my life. My favorite class growing up was social studies and political science. My teachers would say, you get your antennas up the minute we talked about politics. To me, a presidential debate is the equivalent of the Super Bowl. I love presidential debates. I get my cereal, I get my popcorn, and literally, and sit in front of the TV for presidential debates. I love that stuff. And to be on that stage, the one thing that I have said publicly, and I will reiterate again, I'd give anything if I could be on stage for a presidential debate, that I could debate the candidates. But you can't debate the candidate without being a candidate, and that's the problem. But I've always loved doing it. I always love talking about politics. That's not going away. And where it comes in line with Jimmy Pitaro, it's very interesting that you know this. Jimmy Pitaro arrives in 2018. It's in the aftermath of the whole Colin Kaepernick taking the knee thing and what have you. And Jimmy Pitaro walks in there, and he instantly puts down the mandate. We're not doing politics. We're a sports network.
I remember.
If you recall, I was the first to stand up and support him. And the reason why was because he was right. We as a network had gotten away from giving the audience what the audience came to us expecting. It's not that we didn't do sports, but sometimes we lead with our political positions, not taking into account advertisers and sponsors and how our bills were paid and how we were serving to alienate a public. This man had a business to run, and he walked in there and day one immediately reminded us of it. But then as time went on, it got a bit dicey, particularly in the George Floyd murder and the riots in the streets and what have you. And there was still that mandate. But he knew as a network, it was something that couldn't be enforced without it being to our detriment.
Yeah.
So he came to me knowing that I like talking politics. And he looked me dead in the face and he said, "You, I trust." And that's all he had to say. Because what happens is when I go on TV and I address these issues, yes, I'm Stephen A. And yes, I'm my own person. And yes, I have my own feelings. And all of that's true. And it's never going to change. But that doesn't mean I forget my bosses.
Right.
It doesn't mean I forget the network that employs me. It doesn't mean that I just disregard their feelings and their positions and throw them under the bus.
Yeah.
You can be real and authentic and honest and genuine. And in the same breath, remember, you got an obligation to look out for the people that you work with and you work for. And he never had that conversation with me. All he said to me was, "I trust you." And I knew what that meant. And it meant a lot to me. And the fact that he trusted me and Bob Iger trusted me and Dana Walden trusted me and what have you, it meant the world to me because what they were saying is, you may not agree with us. You may say you don't agree with us, but we know you'll be responsible
Right.
and mindful of making sure that you remember we're your teammates. And I appreciated the trust that they placed in me. And so anytime I'm on the air, whatever, I always remember that. Yeah, I've got my own brand and I'm doing my own thing or whatever. But I don't cut the check. I cash them. When it comes to Disney, Disney cuts that check. And we get away from a societal perspective on far too many occasions, acting like everybody works for themselves. We all answer to somebody, even on YouTube. They could sit up there and police the content that they put out. They could literally red flag that bad boy and limit your reach. If you say the wrong thing, if you do the wrong thing. All of us want this freedom and we want to act like we get to operate with impunity. That's not the real world. That's not real life. And what I love about working for Disney is that they remind you of it without ever telling you it. All they have to do is bring up the brand. And that's what Pitaro did with me. He didn't say anything other than, "I trust you." And that's all he had to say. And I knew what that meant. He trusts me to be responsible enough to be my true, authentic self while still being responsible enough to look out for the brand.
Yeah.
And that's what I remember.
Yeah. Let's go back to one of your first passions, hoops.
Yeah.
Who won the Luka trade?
Well, if you're talking long term, clearly the Los Angeles Lakers won the Luka trade. If you're talking the short term, the Dallas Mavericks got a chance to win it all this year. To add Anthony Davis, who's a 25-12 player, who's one of the elite defensive players in the game, rebounding, shot blocking ability, not just to mention his ability to defend. Adding Anthony Davis with Gafford, with Lively, knowing he no longer has to play the 5. He can play his natural position, the 4. That buffers their defense exponentially, without question. Luka's not even in the same stratosphere as Anthony Davis as a defensive player. Offensively, as great as Luka is, there's this dude by the name of Kyrie Irving. I don't know if you've heard of him. That is all world. That is a showstopper. That is a champion. That averaged 27 a game when LeBron James and him won the title against Golden State. Averaged 29 a game when they lost. This is Kyrie Irving we're talking about here. So to lose Luka is not great. But handing the ball to him, there are worse things that you can do. And then when you combine that with the fact that last year you had Derrick Jones, okay? But now you got Clay. Clay is having a down year. Clay is shooting a career worst from three-point range. That career worst is 38.5%. Do you have any idea how many NBA players wish they could shoot 38.5% from three-point range? It's Klay Thompson we're talking about here. So you got a shooter. You got an electrifying point guard. You got an all-world forward to add to the big bodies you already have in a Western Conference that plays small ball for the most part. When they play big, the only person who really plays big is Jokic, okay? And then you're talking about Isaiah Hartenstein, all right, and Chet Holmgren. If I said to you, Hartenstein or Anthony Davis, who you picking? You're picking Anthony Davis. And so we have to know that this is what we're talking about here. this is what Dallas has available to them. They don't have a global iconic figure who is a brand for them and the face of their franchise anymore. They don't have that. But you can make a legitimate argument that for the next year or two, they may very well have the better team. And that's what you have to look at.
Well, Stephen A., thank you for your time.
Yeah.
This is Mike McCarthy live for Radio Row for Front Office Sports.